My son was 5. Yeah, my son was 5. He had at 5, he didn't know a ton of stuff about NASA, but he knew that his dad was selected to be an astronaut, and he knew that meant going to space. So he came running up to the door to me when I came home from that first day. What do you do on the first day? Like, you find out where you park, you get your login for your computer, where's the bathroom, who's my boss. So I come home, and he comes running up to me, and he goes, Dad, did you go to the moon today? I'm like, no, son, check with me on Thursday, that kind of thing. But
it's super cute.
Yeah, super cute moment.
Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 Podcast.
What's up, Mount Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 Podcast. Today's guest has lived 10 lifetimes in one. That includes a Navy SEAL career, a NASA career, 3 space missions, spacewalks. He's a TV star on Disney Plus, and now CEO of the Medal of Honor Museum, Mr. Chris Cassidy. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, man. My pleasure. Glad to be with you guys.
We used to do, I don't think we do it today. We normally do like this, tell us who Chris is. But I feel like Kev just gave it to us, right? That's Chris Cassidy. But do you have a different spin on that? Like, if you run into somebody and they say, hey, man, tell me what you're up to, what would you tell them?
Well, it depends. If it's the person sitting next to me on the airplane where I want to put, all I'm dying to do is put my earbuds in and watch the next episode of Ozark,
Okay, good point.
Yeah,
good point. No, it's just in the elevator. You got 30 seconds with them from 2 to 14 or whatever.
Yeah, so it just kind of depends the nature of the conversation, because I've been really blessed to have some amazing experiences, and in a couple of seconds, it just, are we talking space stuff? Are we talking SEAL stuff? But in general, if it's short conversation, I say I just retired from 28 years as a naval officer. That's it. Because that's really all of the cool things I've got to do are because I was in the Navy. Mm. And we can unpack that as we talk, but it gave me so many opportunities to do some cool stuff.
Let's just rewind it, right? Like, we've gotten into this sort of rut, might be the right word, of just saying, start us from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Where's home? Tell us about growing up. Because I feel like parts of those stories, not parts of them, most of the parts of those influence who you are, which influence where you ended up, which influences what you did. And so oftentimes I think we draw something from there. So tell us a story.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in southern Maine, and normal kid, played sports, was, had a brother. We had a nice family, laughed a lot, watched football all the time, and normal stuff. Came time for picking out schools, and there's a good story here, because it really is fundamental to who I am and the opportunities I've had. It came time to look for schools, and I don't know, some of the listeners may remember, you go to the guidance counselor's office and you've got like this big book that tells you about different schools, and you flip through it. Now everybody just does it on the internet. But right. Back then, I was doing that, and I came across a picture of the service academies, glossy pictures of men and women in sharp-looking uniforms and cool buildings by the water. And I remember we watched the Army-Navy football game every year, my brother and dad and I, and that kind of struck a chord with me, like, oh, wow, this could be I could see myself here. Like, that looks really cool. I didn't have anybody in the military ahead of me, so there was no sort of reference frame for what that meant. But I thought, wow, I'm going to pursue that, and I realized it's free to go there. That was pretty nice. But in the fine print, it says you have to. It's free, but you have to pay back with service to the Navy. And okay, whatever. I'll be in the Navy. I don't care. I didn't really know what that meant. It wasn't because I was longing to serve my country. I was too young, immature, naive, whatever the right word is, to appreciate what it meant to wear a uniform, right? Like, I was just trying to find a way to pay for school and to go to a place that I was proud to go to. The the process to go to a service academy is twofold. You got to apply to the school and to your congressman. Mm-hmm. I just learned about the congressman part, so I did that. Went for the interview. The lady said, "Good job, we got it from here." And I'm like, "Okay, that's it. Nothing else." No, nothing else. We got it. So fall of my senior year, that was that. Fast forward spring of my senior year in high school. Everybody's getting the thick or the thin envelopes if you're in or not. I was getting information from other schools, but not from the Naval Academy. So I called the admissions office and, "Hey, I'm Chris Cassidy, wondering what the status is." And she said, "Okay." I hear her thumbing through files. "Can you spell your name?" I spell it. More files. "What's your social security number?" More files. "We don't have anything on you. We don't even know who you are." I'm like, oh man. So this is late in the spring of my senior year in high school, to the place I was really dying to go to. As luck, fate, whatever would have it, my friend and I had planned to go with his father on a work trip that he had. The next week was our spring vacation from Maine to D.C., which is like an 8-hour drive or so, and we were going to do that and just be sightseers in D.C., kind of like what you just did with your son.
Yeah, right.
And so we did this, and I took an afternoon and went from D.C. to Annapolis, like half hour away, and walked into the admissions office, and the same lady, I could recognize her voice, and she said, "Oh, yeah, you're the guy from Maine. You need to talk to Captain Malillo. Down the hall on the right. Can't miss him. Third door." I'm like, okay. Walk down the hall, turn the corner, enter the room, and there is the stereotypical Marine Corps poster. This gentleman with shoes you can see your reflection in, perfect uniform, rigid as a board, like totally fit, square jaw, the whole 9 yards. And I'd never seen somebody like that in person. I was pretty intimidated. Oh, man. Okay, here we go. So I told him my story, and I could tell he was looking at me like, who is this guy? Like every other kid got their thing in on time. What's this? What's up with this kid? So 5 or 6 minutes I'm in his office, and he's like, okay, I got it. I'll get back to you. So I left there thinking, sorry for the long story, but it's worth it.
No,
keep it. Yeah, go.
I already got a nugget out of it.
And I'll get back to you. So I drive back to Maine those hours and thinking, oh, well, I tried. That's the best I could do. But it's not going to happen. Naval Academy is not in my future, so let's look for Plan B. Go back to school the next week, and I get paged during school to come to the main office for a phone call. The secretary hands me the phone. She says, "Somebody from the Navy." I'm like, oh, okay. I take the phone, and he goes, "Hey, Cassidy, it's Captain Malillo. I got good news. I can get you into the Naval Academy prep school, but you need to tell me right now on the phone if you're in or not." And I didn't know what the prep school meant. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know how that impacted my future. But I knew that this was my chance, and said, "Yes, sir. I'm in. Count me in. Thank you." Hung up the phone, and turns out the prep school was the best thing. It's a year in Newport, Rhode Island. If you keep good grades, you get automatically go to the Naval Academy. And if it wasn't for him, the moral of the story is, if it wasn't for him, our lives intersected for 5 or 6 minutes. That's it. And if it wasn't for him, I really wouldn't be talking to you guys right now about stuff.
Right.
Because he gave me the opportunity to go to the school. If I hadn't been in the school, I wouldn't have learned about the SEALs and certainly wouldn't have had a career there. And because I was in the SEAL teams, I was a better applicant to be an astronaut, and opened those doors. Just unbelievable. And in retrospect, he's a gentleman that didn't know me, didn't have any... Really, he woke up that morning thinking he was going a normal day at work, and he was, and he did. But he made a phone call that changed my life, and it fundamentally put me on a direction that I wouldn't have ever dreamed of. And I think about that now, today, like you, me, we all can be Captain Malillo for somebody any given day. Any day, you don't know.
That's right.
And as you could be the recipient of it, At this stage in our lives, generally we're the ones that can help people. But when you're young and you're just kind of waking up, shaving, that could be the day that changes your life. And I really, that lesson has struck with me deeply.
We talk about often small moments have a profound impact. It could be one sentence that just changes your trajectory. Mm-hmm. And that's a common occurrence. You put it so well on that. There's several nuggets in there, because stepping back from him, you followed up. Like so many times in business, we ask, like, have you followed up? And it's, I sent an email. It's like, call the person. They might not have seen the email. And that could spark sales. That could spark job offers. It could spark so many things of just doing that fundamental of following up. Because then that activated the rest of the story.
And maybe he saw that I was a human and not just a stack in a piece of paper. There's a real kid there. I don't know.
You ever circle back with him? Like, have you ever had another encounter with him?
That's a fantastic question because the answer has been no for 30 years. I've told this story hundreds of times and never reconnected with him. I tried one time, maybe 15 years ago, and didn't work out. I never found him. But my wife has heard me say this, and she knows how meaningful this story is. And we had a launch party. In fact, it was in the Disney Plus series. You probably right.
The one where you announced y'all are married?
Yeah, we were married.
Yeah.
That party, it was at the JFK Presidential Library in Boston, and I'm from the New England area, so it was a convenient place to have it, and we had 250 people there. And so it's a big party, which requires planning and all that. In the planning process, she tracked him down with the help of a classmate of mine from the academy. Unbeknownst to me, found him. There's a whole story there because he didn't believe that it was real when she first got the voicemail, but then, and invited him to this launch party. And he at first said, I don't think we'll go. He went home, told his wife, and his wife's like, well, we're going, right? Yeah, of course. Okay, so they show up. We're in this room. It's 250 of my closest friends and family, so I know everybody in the room. Except one guy. I'm like, who the hell's that guy?
He's a wedding crasher.
Yeah, he's a wedding crasher. He's sitting at a table laughing and joking with other people, and I see him across the room, so I kind of making my way over there, and all of a sudden, my wife and my friend who was in on the secret intercept me and like, where are you going? Well, I'm going to go talk to this table. No, come on over here, and they escorted him out. And so because my wife was asking me the day before, like, what are you going to say at the party? I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say at the party. And she never really asks. So she said, well, I think you should tell the Captain Malolo story. Well, okay, I'll tell the story. So I'm telling the story.
What a genius.
I just told you guys, like, and I get to the punchline, and she's like, Chris, sorry, I need to interrupt you. Captain Malolo, will you please stand up?
Oh, goosebump moment.
So I know, I'm getting them right now. So right there with all of my friends and family, I got to see him, shake his hand, give him a hug, and say thank you. Look him in the eye and say thank you. And it was perfect, right? Like he said exactly that. To be honest, I don't even remember you. You're just a guy. I have, one or two silver bullet opportunities a year when I was in that job, and you got one of them, know, and it just kind of hammers home the point, right? Like you just never know.
Wow. That's a profound ROI on that investment for him, right? To have those silver bullets and do that, because you don't have to do that, but no, he gets to have that rocking chair moment someday when he's reflecting like, holy cow, I was a part of that. Yeah,
and then we've stayed in touch since, and I talked to him from space a couple times on that mission, and a great guy. Yeah.
What's he up to these days?
He's retired from the Marines and then stayed in the government. He's a civilian, senior level civilian working in the Pentagon.
Awesome. Dude, I love that story. We could end right now, and it would have all been worth it because that story is amazing.
That story is amazing. It is really, truly amazing.
Yeah. Okay, but it doesn't end there.
It doesn't end there.
And so you're off to preparatory school on the basis that if your grades are good, you're headed to the Naval Academy.
Yep, and that worked out. And I showed up. I played basketball at the prep school. I didn't continue that at the Naval Academy. I just was an unrecruited guy and just enjoyed the 4 years there. Not a whole lot to talk about then, but what happens with service academies because you have to, as I mentioned, you have to pay the years back, 5-year commitment. What are you going to do with those years? So in the military, Navy specifically, you can drive submarines, you can fly airplanes, you can be on a surface ship, you can be in the SEAL teams, EOD. There's like a handful of others. And there's a process by which you're ranked by your class, by your grades, and by your military performance, and it spits out this number. And the number one person gets the number to pick of the litter, all the way down to the last person in the class gets whatever's left. And I knew I was interested in SEAL teams, so I pursued. I met my first SEAL. Like, I didn't know about SEALs in high school. Now everybody knows about SEALs. You can't turn around in Barnes & Noble without knocking over 4 or 5 SEAL team guy books. But back then, it was not the case.
No, it was not.
There was a book about Vietnam, men with black faces or something like that, and that was the only mention of Navy SEAL that I'd ever heard of before. But I saw a few. They have, a couple different guys on staff at the academy, and I met a few of them, and I was intrigued and thought, well, that guy's an impressive guy, and learned more about it and kept going with the prerequisites. And it worked out. I was able to get one of the positions. There were 16 positions my year. Class is about 1,000 people. So I was lucky to get one of those 16 spots. And off I went to SEAL training in California.
Yeah, all that fun.
All that fun. And it's every bit as evil as they show on the Discovery Channel or whatever. It's pretty painful. But to summarize SEAL training in one short sentence is you don't get through it alone. Mm-hmm. Kind of like life, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody has crummy days. Everybody has great days. The beauty of it is typically your crummy day doesn't line up with somebody else's, and that person can boost you up when you need it, and vice versa.
Amen.
And that is what SEAL training is all about. You have a buddy, you go through the whole thing with your buddy. Literally, you're oftentimes tied with a rope in the water from each other. So you learn to give and take when needed, and because it's about getting the mission done. It's not about you. It's about the mission. It's about the team. And everybody contributing to get that done, and that's what it's all about.
We did, I don't know, it was the first 10 episodes of the podcast where we talked about the value of a community.
Oh yeah,
and that was one of the things we never knew we'd end up here talking about that, but like that was one of the things we were talking about is like you need people in your orbit so that when you're bummed out, they're going to check on you. When you're having a bad day, they're having a great day, and that equilibrium is what helps sort of continue to propel us all forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I remember Hell Week starts on Sunday night and ends on Friday, and it's like this one big blur of stuff. And it was halfway through, say the sun was setting on Wednesday, and the instructors are evil, and they normally you get to eat in the dining hall and have like real food. On Wednesday evening, they know it's the midway point, so you get a cold MRE that you're sitting on a sandy beach and the water's hitting your butt and your feet, and watching the sun go down. West Coast, so sun sets over the water, and I remember just looking at that sun and kind of drifting off in La La Land, thinking, "Man, this is just really lousy. What am I doing here?" And right then, I got an elbow in my side, and it was my buddy Don.
he knew it.
He knew. Just because you know each other really well when you're going through hard times like that together, and he saw it in my eyes, and he just nudged me and said, "Hey, snap out of it." And that's all it took.
Man.
And I was like, "Okay, got it. Roger that."
Yeah. What? Go ahead.
So I saw doing all the research, Honor Man. That was the first time that showed up, and I did research on what that means. But explain what that means, and probably most importantly, why do you think they selected you for it?
It's tough. I don't know why. I have a somewhat inkling, but that's the one recognition in my whole professional career that I'm most proud of. It's not flying in space. I mean, that's cool, but the honor graduate of BUD/S, it was something I didn't expect. It's a combination of your performance, your physical performance, your attitude, and belief in your peers as well as the instructors. So I was very, very humbled to get that award. It means a lot to me. And the funny thing is, it's just a small little plaque, like that big, says Honor Man on it. If you walked by at my house, you wouldn't even look at it hardly.
Right.
But it's the most important thing.
Yeah, because you got other people through it, most likely. It wasn't just about you, to what you said.
Yeah.
Ooh,
when you fast forward, like, we'll get there, International Space Station, the camaraderie from other parts of the world, like, you start connecting these dots in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said earlier to like drill down on a little bit. You said something to the effect of, at the time, nobody really knew what the SEALs were, but now you can't spin around in a bookstore without bumping a SEAL book off. Mm-hmm. What's your perspective on that?
You know, there's lots of great stories out there to be told. I think some of those are people monetizing it. But if somebody's got a good story and they're willing to write a book and they're not giving up secrets, go for it. And I do believe that if they're writing books about military operations, that it really should be vetted through the service, and there should be some ability to make sure that they're not giving up doctrine or secrets or whatever. I think early on it got a little bit out of control in our community, military-wide maybe, but specifically I know about the SEAL teams, just a lot flooding the market, and people just eager to get their story out there. I don't have any ill feelings to anybody that's written a book.
Are they not? I don't understand the process, but are they not vetted by the
there was
DOJ? I guess
there was a period of time where guys were just writing stuff and publishing stuff, and
okay.
there was some angst in our community about that. Yeah, I wasn't involved. I mean, I was in the Navy active duty, but as an astronaut at Space Center, I was kind of not really as part of the community.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, this might be a weird question based on that, but your first deployment is right after September 11th happens.
Yeah.
And your boots on the ground a couple weeks after that attack.
Yep.
Is that reactive intel? Is it coming up with a game plan? Is there anything you could get into on that?
Yeah. So,
I mean, are we talking October 7th on the ground? Like that was okay.
Yeah. So where do I start? So the SEAL teams, the Navy specifically, but I mean the Navy in general, the SEAL teams specifically, you get together with your unit. You're together as a unit for about 2 years. The final 6 months of those 2 years are an overseas deployment, and then when you form up at the beginning, you do a bunch of individual training, and then small unit training, and then training with other units that you will deploy with, and then off you go for that 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, the unit returns, and people come and go. New leadership comes in, and you start that whole process all over again. So I was a part of SEAL Team 3 Echo Platoon, and our normally scheduled 6-month deployment was to the Middle East around Thanksgiving. So we'd been together for about a year and a half or so, and we were in the very final stages of getting ready for deployment. So we had checked all of the readiness boxes, and we were just kind of basically about to start some vacation and guys take some downtime before being gone from home for 6 months.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the planes were about 9 a.m. Eastern time, so that was 6 a.m. in San Diego. So I was in the shower getting ready for work, and my wife came in and said, "You got to see the TV." And that's when I left, knowing that, all right, well, our deployment is supposed to be in just a couple weeks. We're going to be packing our gear today.
Yeah, right.
And we did. We had everything packed up by the end of that day, the 11th. Now, truthfully, it just took some time for the big logistics machine to sort itself out and who's going where and when and all that. So it was a couple weeks, 10 days maybe, until we actually left the U.S., went to Kuwait for a little bit, and then went to Oman, and then we went from Oman right into Kandahar, Afghanistan.
Man.
Yeah.
That is... Man, there's really no words for like that period of time.
It was crazy, and there was no real beefed up infrastructure. I went back to Afghanistan 2 years later in 2003 and 2004, completely different experience. By then, infrastructure is established, everything from bathrooms to chow halls to hot water trucks, and the perimeter growing, and basically the military construction industry had come in and made life a little better. But that first deployment, it was the wild, wild west in terms of creature comfort and as well as military operations.
Interesting.
I was just listening to a book this morning. Dan Bradley, the one that introduced you to us, or us to you, The Mission, the Men, and Me. And they talk about that out there, the overnight logistics, and as soon as the sun drops, like how much setup is happening until sunrise. And you could just hear the helicopters and the cargo and everything moving, and all of a sudden the light comes back on and like, oh, we have a camp set up here.
Yeah,
it was pretty wild. I just listened to that this morning, actually.
Mm-hmm. When we were in D.C. last week, so we were talking offline. I'll tell it briefly online, but William and I went last week from our air day last week to D.C. for 4 days. One of the things he wanted to do was walk over to the Pentagon, and so we walked the perimeter. I've been to the 9/11 memorial in New York, but I'd never been to the one there at the Pentagon. Presumably you have as well. And just sort of walking through there, like recounting what that all felt like, was a pretty like solemn moment. And as you're weaving through those benches, I suppose they are, like pointed different directions and whatnot, and then like remembering and recounting it to my 14-year-old who's read it about it in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had like a real like solemn, I don't know if that's the right word, it's a hard emotion to like really describe moment, like explaining it to him and trying to like capture what that all felt like when it was going on. How would you like capture the emotional overlay on top of that as you're there in San Diego and then deployed, and like, is it sad? Is it energetic? Is it like we're on mission? Like, what does that feel like?
Well, that's an interesting question to answer, because we're, as a military unit, SEAL unit, we're trained to do that. That's our mission, right? It's like, I don't know what the analogy is in your industry, but you're trained to build the foundation of a building. Mm-hmm. When you got a giant building that really tests your skills, you're kind of excited. Yeah. It's what you're there to do. And so there's these mix of emotions where you're just super pumped to be on the front edge of something that means something to our nation. And we all had a Fire Department of New York and Police Department of New York patches on our gear, and feeling like you're taking it to the bad guys to help our country heal and to find them, find bin Laden. And
right.
But you're still a husband, a son, a father. And so there's that side of you that's like, okay, well, I'm going to some place that's dangerous and that puts those things at risk, my family at risk, from losing somebody. So there's a lot of emotions there, but I just, in general, remember being sad when I said goodbye to my family, but as soon as the door closed on the airplane, being focused on let's get this done.
And that's part of the like high operator of like, that's an emotion and I have it, but we're on mission. Like we're about to take the bad guy out here.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Something new that I saw from the research, submersible SDV team. What is that? What did they do?
Oh yeah, so
what did y'all do?
Yeah, so the SEAL delivery vehicles are about 20 feet long and 4 or 5 feet wide, and a flooded submersible. So what does that mean? It means when you submerge underwater, you have scuba diving gear on. There's water all around you. There's water in between your face and the display. It's not like a real submarine where there's air. So you're breathing scuba gear. And we would launch from a host submarine with a device called a dry deck shelter, which is basically a big hanger bolted onto the back of the submarine with the mini submarine inside of it. We open up some valves, flood this hanger up, equalize pressure, open a giant door, and then launch our mini submarine and drive off from the middle of the ocean to somewhere and go do some secret mission, and then come back to the submarine when,
that's so cool.
Some 8 or 9 hours later. Yeah, I loved that mission. I'll tell you, it was so cool. And I've tried to figure out why I liked it so much. One, it's just very unique, but also, once you submerged, there was nobody to tell you anything, to give you guidance. It was just you and your buddy figuring stuff out. And so this concept of commander's intent, I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, but it's a military term for, hey, this is what our overall objective is, here's your mission. Our intent is this. You have a specific mission. So what it does is give a decision maker, a leader, the framework for when something doesn't go as planned, you really can use good head work, good situational awareness, use the best data that you have in front of you to make decisions that are in line with the intent of the commander. And that's what I loved about driving those mini submarines. Once you submerged there, it was just up to you to figure it out. Calling back and get Mother May I, or this is our situation, tell us what to do. You just had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Yeah.
So does that vehicle return to the submarine back, reverse engineer what you just told us, how you get out, you get back in?
Yeah. And over the course of many hours, neither vehicle ever surfaces. So it always blew me away that we're in the middle of the ocean and we find this submarine, we can get back in, and nothing ever broached the surface all those hours.
Even y'all?
Even us. Yep.
So what's the mission?
Well,
Not
can't
specific.
answer that.
Yeah,
generalities. If you're not popping up.
So you can put tracking devices on submarines. You can put things in a harbor. You can put bombs on a ship. You can it has the capacity to carry some people in the back. You can insert people onto land. Those people would surface.
Got it.
But the vehicle itself never does.
I just had this visualization of it coming from the sub, like up from land, and people on land be like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
Okay. That's legit Frogman.
That's legit Frogman stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was a young guy, early college, maybe when I was learning about the SEALs, I read a book about the Italians had mini submarines in World War II, and man, those guys had some press, you know what? And those stories really, I was just fascinated by their bravery and just audacity to do incredible missions. Yeah.
Audacity is a really good word there. And again, I'm just looking at it through my own lens, but as we're in Washington this last week, like walking through museums and stuff, it's like full of people being audacious. Is that how you would reconjugate that? Audacious.
Like you looked at me.
Yeah. Like just saying, you know what, we've never done anything like this ever before, but
let's try it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great word.
Well, before we spin out of this, is there any stories or lessons of significance from that Navy SEAL career that you want to share?
Oh man. One of the things that that BUDS SEAL training and Hell Week does is makes you realize you can always do one more push-up. You can always run to the next telephone pole. You're cold now, but you can be a little colder. And there's been different points in my active SEAL career where that was true, like long underwater dives, just really, really cold. And there's no place to escape. There's no place to go, but you just got to get back to the submarine, at hour 7 in 50-degree water. It's just like, oh, wow. That's what SEAL training was about.
Yeah.
And then, just later in life and different things, like, okay, I got one more push-up in me, figuratively and literally.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's funny because well, it's not funny. Funny is not the right word. Interesting. Because so many people just think, like, that's it. I don't have any more. I've given everything I can give. And if you can, like, call that out, like, if you, and obviously the training, like, ingrain that into you where you're like, no, my mind wants to quit, but obviously I can keep going. Like, the ability to, in that moment, harness that idea. Say, no, I can do one more push-up.
Yeah.
I can do one more.
That's why I listen to those books during marathon training. And it has nothing to do with the war stories. It's for that exact point. Like, I'm running on a street in shoes, comfortable. Like, I have a 18-mile run or whatever, and I'm 12 miles in, and then those negative thoughts creep, like, you should quit, like, all that sort of stuff. You're listening to, like, they're up for 10 days. You're like, all right, wimp, keep going.
Keep
like,
going.
Yeah, that's nothing compared to what you're listening to right now. That's why I download all those.
Just burning through them.
Yeah.
Burning through them. All right, so I don't know how to go from there to NASA, so you'll have to tell us a story arc. Yeah,
I'll help you. So before Afghanistan, I did that SEAL delivery vehicle mission early in my career, right out of SEAL training. And that deployment cycle that I described to you, 2 years, where then you do 6 months, and then you start over again. And I had a young family, and kind of 4 straight years of a lot on the road and 2 6-month deployments. I knew that, instinctively knew that my family needed a break from that. So I was very interested in going to grad school. Grad school seemed like a good fit, family time and do that. In that process of finding a grad school, I learned that there's some schools that have very good ocean programs, underwater programs, and having that experience coming out of the SDVs seemed like a good way to transition from my experience to the academic world. And it turned out to be right. At MIT, they had a great program, and I got hooked up with a professor there. And so I'm on my way to MIT, and I met Bill Shepard, who was the first Navy SEAL to become an astronaut, and he had been to the Naval Academy and MIT. And when I was going to MIT, I was like, oh wow, my background is kind of similar to his. It's shaping up to be, and he became an astronaut. Maybe that's something that could work for me too. So I reached out to him. He was gracious and spoke to me, became a good advisor, and kind of informed me what the process is. Where's the website? What forms do you fill out? How often do they accept? Blah blah blah. The nuts and bolts of it. And so we at NASA select astronauts generally every 4 years. In the 90s, it was every 2 years. We were flying space shuttles a lot, and so I applied what would have been the class of 2000, and that was the beginning of my graduate school. I hadn't been to grad school. September 11th hadn't happened, so none of the Afghanistan things had happened yet. So I was not given a call. I was not given an interview. I was just Joe Blow, the applicant, and did not get selected. 4 years later, they had a class in 2004, which I applied to and was ultimately selected. I had completed grad school. I had combat experience, 2 tours in Afghanistan. I was 4 years older. I was just a much more well-rounded applicant. So that first deployment that we talked about in Afghanistan was 2001. I went back there in 2003, and that's when I had my application pending to NASA, and I got a phone call, another phone call that changed my life, when the chief astronaut called me and said, "Hey, you want to come work for us at NASA?" And that was right after coming home from my second Afghanistan deployment in 2004.
So it's a completely different agency, right? Like, you're leaving the Navy at that point?
No. I was still. I just retired from the Navy 9 months ago.
Okay.
I received a paycheck from the Navy. I had to do annual performance reports with the Navy. My duty station became the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So the whole NASA career is still within military career, because you said like 28 years.
Yeah,
combining
still,
both.
And we have NASA astronauts that weren't in the military prior. They get selected as an astronaut. They become a government civil servant and get their pay that way. If you're a military person and get selected like I was, you just get a new set of duty orders and you show up there. Your pay remains with the Navy or whatever service you're in. NASA, there's accounting for that, right? Otherwise, NASA would be getting free labor. So NASA reimburses the service for the dollars or whatever. But that's transparent to me. For me, I'm just keep getting my same paycheck.
Interesting.
So there's no special astronaut pay. Yeah, I just got. In fact, I took a pay cut because as a SEAL, active SEAL, I got additional stipend every month for dive pay, demolition pay, and parachute pay, and I was not able to keep those pays when I got to NASA, so I lost.
Effectively took a pay cut.
I took a pay cut to go be an astronaut. But it was, as the guy in Shrek would say, that's a price I'm willing to take.
Yeah, that's right. I have such a weird squirrel question.
Mm-hmm.
Your lucky charm. like when did that came on board pre-NASA acceptance,
Yeah.
right? Was that when it was still an ambition?
Right, exactly. So what he's talking about is I have this little plastic astronaut guy. I think it came in a toy set that my son got at Christmas one year or whatever, and there was 2 of these little guys, and I took one of them and took it with me to Afghanistan, and had it in my uniform pocket on every single mission I did. And when we came home from that deployment, and all of us in my unit had our fingers and toes, and we were all alive, I thought, well, something we got lucky. Maybe it was this guy. So my second mission to my second deployment to Afghanistan, that guy was with me in my pocket every single step of the way. And so then he became a good luck charm. And then when I became an astronaut, he was in my spacesuit pocket on all 3 launches.
I love that.
So did you grab it because it was an astronaut, or did you just grab it because it was from your son and it was extra?
I grabbed it because I was an astronaut, and it was right around the time when I met Bill Shepard, and the light bulb dawned on me that, maybe I could be an astronaut too. So I don't know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You still have it?
Oh yeah, I still have it.
That's
He's
awesome.
a little worn. His face is worn. He's got a broken hand, but I still got him.
That's awesome.
He's got a few more experiences in him.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's been a few places.
I should have brought him here today to survive you 2 guys.
Yeah.
This is brutal.
Yeah, this is a challenge. Bud's training, this is the pinnacle right here, having to talk to both of us.
Well, but if we've learned anything, you can just go for one more minute.
You can go for one more minute.
That's right.
So Houston is definitely a change of pace. You leave the Northeast over and then go to the most humid place on the planet.
Yeah.
At the Space Center in Houston. How's that?
Well, if you look closer, there's probably fingernails marks on I-10. Those are mine dragging myself and my family into Houston. But I grew to really love it there. Every place is about your neighbors and your quality of life, and it's humid there. It's one big slab of concrete from Galveston to the Woodlands, but I loved my job. It was a great community to live in, a great community to work in. So I just really, really liked it there.
I'm from Beaumont, which is close.
Yeah.
Where did you live specifically when you were in Houston?
In Seabrook, which is where Kemah is.
I know Kemah. Yeah. I got a good. Rothberg lives kind of in Pearland, Friendswood, right there, close to Seabrook, close to Kemah.
Yeah, all right in there. So I spent the last 18 years there, and just really, really liked it.
All right, so walk us. Sometimes I find myself in spaces where I can ask questions to get going, but I don't tell us about being at the Johnson Space Center. What's that like? What are you working on? Leading us obviously to a shuttle mission.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I remember the first day. So we arrived, and maybe a week or so before I actually had to go to work, and we got settled in a house or whatever, and then I go to work on the first day. My son was 5. Yeah, my son was 5, and he had at 5. He didn't know a ton of stuff about NASA, but he knew that his dad had been was selected to be an astronaut, and he knew that meant going to space. So he came running up to the door to me when I came home from that first day. What do you do on the first day? You find out where you park, you get your login for your computer, where's the bathroom, who's my boss. So I come home, and he comes running up to me, and he goes, Dad, did you go to the moon today? I'm like, no, son, check with me on Thursday, that kind of thing. But
it's super cute.
Yeah, super cute moment. And my kids were, so he was 5, the other one's 7 and 10, I guess. Yeah, 5, 7, and 10, my 3 kids were. So they had moved around a bunch of elementary schools in when I was doing Navy stuff, and now they were going to be established, so that was great. And so family-wise, it was nice to settle in there and have one school district for their whole time. But then on the work side, you start right away as an astronaut candidate. And NASA has an acronym for everything, so that you're called an ASCAN.
No.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So there's the motivation right there to study hard and pass.
Nobody wants to be an
Nobody
ASCAN.
wants to be an ASCAN. Well, actually, there's many people that want to be an ASCAN.
Right. Yeah. Once you are
one, you don't want to be one anymore.
Yeah.
So that's generally 2 years of training. It's kind of like graduate school for space operations. You know, the class is this group of people from all disparate backgrounds, you know, military, non-military, operational backgrounds or not. I happen to be, you know, pilots, non-pilots. I had a lot of diving experience and SEAL experience, but, you know, very, very little academic kind of research, you know, so we had PhD researchers, and you got to take all those people and turn them into operators of a spacecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And so you, much like being in school, back in high school when you had labs, you know, or college and you had labs, you sit in a classroom for part of the day, and then you go in the simulator, which is basically the lab. And at the beginning, you learn one system. Okay, today we're going to learn the computers. Today we're going to learn the electrical power system. And then you do all these single system training to really build up your knowledge. We learned on the space shuttle. Now we don't fly the space shuttle anymore, so the training is slightly different, but the space shuttle and the space station, and you learn all these systems, and then you build up as you progress, and they intertwine the systems. Of course, if you kill electrical power, that affects everything, right? So you get to the point where you can deal with all the different failures, and the instructors are super creative with coming up with failures that, you know, you really might seem small. You know, you got this small sensor over here for the air quality. One string of electrical power is hit over here, but then there's some downstream effects that, you know, and they have these evil scenarios that really can make you work as a crew. So do that
and reverse test your like operational knowledge of how all of this works together.
Yeah, and effectively we're operators of spacecraft, so you have to fly the vehicle. Largely, the vehicles can fly themselves, but you need to be ready to take over when it can't, and so that's the scenarios that you're building up for, is the bad day kind of in space, and how do you deal with it? Procedures, everything is procedure. I don't know if your industry has procedures, but that's a topic I could talk about forever, right? Because you're constantly, procedures are only as good as crappy as they're not. By that I mean you could have a really simple procedure that requires the operator to fill in a whole lot of blanks with knowledge.
Yeah.
But then you're setting up the person or the organization for failure if it's off script.
Right.
Because then you don't know if everybody's going to have the same reaction time or the same reaction in general. Or you could have this super, super detailed procedure that covers every contingency but takes forever to get through and bogs you down because half of it doesn't apply. So you really need a good procedure is effective in guiding somebody, giving you the answers that are a little bit head scratchers, but allow the operator to use it effectively. So we learn how to do procedures, how to work with procedures, and how to not make mistakes.
That's a tricky balance to strike.
It is a tricky balance to strike. I mean, you don't need a procedure to start your car, right? You just get in it, you push the button, put it in reverse, and you go. But when it doesn't start, then you're scratching your head, and some people need a book, and other people go, oh, well, it's the starter, for sure. I know,
right, because I pressed the button and I heard this noise,
and
therefore
noise.
I know it's
I know it's this.
Yeah.
Other people don't know that. So, you know, I'm a big believer in well-written procedures are worth their weight in gold for whether you're flying a spaceship, whether you're building your entertainment system, you know. So anyway,
there's something there. I don't know if we can dive as deeply as I would want to in it, but man, there's something to that because we all live in this space where there is some procedure for your job and how you go about reducing that to a writing and managing through that. And it's a very interesting, like, deep dive topic right there.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be this boxed in where oh, well, we got to call Earl. Earl's the only guy that knows how to do this. Well, where's Earl? He's on vacation till next week, you know?
Yeah. My knee jerk went when you were talking about that, like reduce assumptions to 0, but then that sounds like the super detailed goes through every single step. So
yeah, there's a balance there you got to strike. Yeah. And the ultimate thing is training, right? You want people to be trained. And if you know that everybody is trained to this level, then you can rely a lot on the operator, especially if it's standardized training. Everybody knows if this is the outcome, I press this red button.
Right.
So okay, that's interesting confluence between a procedure and a standardized training too. Like I wouldn't have necessarily put those together without you having had said it, but right, like I reduce assumptions by raising my training level and standardizing it. And I'm trying to like speak in generalities, but like there's a lot to that that's like I'm kind of newly processing.
And even with equally trained operators, not everybody has the same access to data. So there's that too. And it's just a really interesting topic. We don't have to go into it all now, but it fascinates me the how errors can get into a system with the best trained people and the best procedures. Everybody's about mitigating errors and mitigating risk and doing things safely, effectively, and making money and all those things.
All right, I'm going to pin it because I want to, at some point, maybe some day in the future, I want to come back to that because I have lots of questions, but I also don't want to get like
super down there,
bogged super deep because I know we have a lot of other stories to tell. But I'm super interested in that.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think we were at the astronaut candidate training. You learn how to package all the training as an astronaut. It includes the vehicle training. It includes spacewalk training. We have a large pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory. It's
a fancy word for pool.
Fancy acronym for huge pool.
What is it? What's the acronym for that?
NBL. Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory. It's about the size of a high school gymnasium filled up with water, and then the space station on the bottom of the pool. So we'll take spacesuits, real spacesuits that are D-rated for the water, and then practice on how to do the basics of spacewalking, and then to the more advanced stuff and pre-mission readiness and all that.
This is all part of standardized training we're going through as we approach whatever the next phase is.
It's true. This is all standardized training, but spacewalking and robotics there are two things that are a little more high risk and mission specific. So you get this baseline training, and then when you get assigned to a mission, there's further training for the very specific things that you'll be doing when you're up there.
Gotcha. I learned a new term. Maybe I'm jumping the shark on this, but I learned a new term while we were at the is it the Udvar Hazy Air and Space?
Yep.
And the is it the Discovery that's there? And they have lying at the base of it the Canada arm. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I was like, I've seen this connected to the shuttle before, so I'm that guy. I stopped reading all about it. Can't support its own weight in Earth's gravitation.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry, scroll moment right there. But it's like this arm that connects to the shuttle. Now I'm doing something funny with an arm. That like could help, pull things out of the payload bay and whatnot. But it doesn't have the strength to like support its own.
The motors can't support themselves
on Earth.
And there's there's two Canadarms. One that's fixed to the shuttle payload bay, and another one that's on the space station that has redundant ends, so it can like inchworm its way around the space station, grab on to a grapple fixture, release its other one, and kind of flop over and inchworm around. And we use it without that. Like picture, can you build skyscrapers without a crane? No, you can't build a space station without a robotic arm.
Right,
and it's the same thing.
Yeah, but I think I got a little ahead of us there, though. I got super excited about the Canada arm.
Oh yeah, because you could scroll off like. Who came up with the idea to build an international space station? This is going to go orbit in outer space someday, and this is what it's going to do. You're like, who? The pioneers of this.
Right.
It's out of hand.
It's an interesting concept, too. It existed first as a U.S. space station called Space Station Freedom, And it really wasn't getting the funding traction, and it was looking like it was going to get canceled. And I'm probably missing a bunch of details, but when the concept came, well, let's partner with other countries, specifically Russia, and we'll build this thing together called the International Space Station. And then we brought in the European Space Agency, Japanese Space Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency and formed this international partnership. And that's what has been really what's carried the day for the space station is its international cooperation and in the unique way that space travel can bring countries together. Mm-hmm. We can talk about it now or later, but that brings into play. We partner with the Russians.
Yeah, that is.
How do you not think it?
Yeah, and I've spent many years in Moscow, and we have the base where they train cosmonauts is called Star City. It's not far from Moscow downtown, and we have a NASA compound there where we stay. And then we train with the cosmonauts and go to class with the cosmonauts and become really good friends with them and the instructors and the engineers over there and the administrative folks. So I have lots of friends over there, and I haven't had the opportunity to talk to them as individuals yet, but my general sense is as they're all kind of perplexed and embarrassed about what's going on. And so it's an interesting, troublesome situation. But back to the partnership, how's it going to affect our missions in space? And I don't know. I don't see us sharing rides in the Soyuz of cosmonauts coming over here and launching a SpaceX. I just don't see that as an ongoing answer.
Yeah. Kevin and I were texting last night about that sort of issue and like, how does this work and that sort of idea. And you obviously know way more about this than I do, but in my reading about what's going on in sort of our international alliances, it seems like a few things are, I think the word I used last night was sacred. I don't know that that's the right word, but there's some fission experiments that are going on that are international basis, and we're not like ostracizing the Russian partners there. Like they're like, okay, like this is more important than that. Let's keep working on this together. And I wondered if like is there some sort of like agreement? I'm using my eye fingers like pointing, like agreement with respect to our space station operations as well as like, I get it. We're super unhappy with what's going on here, but there's people up there. We're going to continue that mission, or does that break apart?
Yeah. I mean, I've been out of NASA since all of this Ukraine stuff has happened, but of course I keep up with my friends and colleagues that are still there. And my one friend who was on the space station recently said, "Yeah, we're just kind of not talking about it. We'll eat dinner together. We cooperate. It's days as usual up here on the space station. It's not those cosmonauts that are,
right.
They're there. They're trying to accomplish the same safe mission on the space station every day that the astronauts are. But it still makes it tense and tough, and there's questions that they probably don't ask each other and topics that they don't touch on.
Yeah. They care about each other.
Yeah.
Like, no need to throw stones. You mentioned it was one of the favorite things about this journey was the togetherness of the world working on these groundbreaking items.
It's just so cool to be sitting there eating together as a crew, watching out the window as the Earth is going by, and different countries' music. Different music from different countries playing on the speakers. It just makes it really special.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to lose sight of where we were talking there, but I want to like reverse back to where you're leaving the training and eventually end up on Endeavor. Is that
Endeavor? Yeah. My first mission was pretty much 5 years exactly from when I showed up at NASA till I flew. So summer 2004, I show up, 2 years, astronaut candidate. And then you're just kind of in line waiting for your turn to be on a crew. In the meantime, you support the missions that are happening. You work in mission control. You continue your own training, and just sort of refine your knowledge in all those different ways. And then at some point, you get a call or a text or an email that says, "Hey, come see the chief." And you go down there, and he or she says, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to be, in my case, on STS-127. And these are your crewmates," and off you go. I think we trained for about a little over a year and a half. Most of the training right there in Houston, a little bit. You travel to the Kennedy Space Center to see some of the real equipment, because all the training devices in Houston are mock-ups.
Mm-hmm.
The real equipment, the real boxes that you're going to install, the real space shuttle, the real this and that is in Florida. So travel down there occasionally, and then it comes time to launch, and we're in quarantine on the shuttle. We'd go in quarantine a week before launch, and then get down to Florida, and your families would come. You say goodbye to your families that week, and then you see them. They start coming into town to Florida 3 days before, and it's a big party. Each crew member gets 250 launch guest passes, so you have all these excited friends and family there in town, and it's really cool. It's a special time. Our shuttle crew has the dubious distinction of, I think we tied for the most number of scrubs.
Mm.
So what does that mean? The launch time is calculated to be roughly 4 o'clock in your duty day. It doesn't mean it's 4 o'clock outside in the real world, but we adjust our sleep so that it's your afternoon time of when your sleep-wake cycle. You wake up, you have breakfast, you have some downtime, you then have lunch, and they call it your last meal, which is a lousy word for it.
That is a terrible way.
Yeah. You have your final meal, put your suit on, and then you go out to the launch pad. You go to the launch pad about 3 hours before liftoff. Everybody's probably seen pictures of astronauts walking out of a building and waving as they get onto this bus, and then you get on the bus, you drive out there, and you've been to the launch pad many times. It's usually like this very industrial place, forklifts, hard hats, guys in dually pickup trucks and moving stuff and noise. Launch day, it's none of that. It's totally quiet. The bus is the only vehicle going to the pad, and everybody else is leaving. There's nobody there. You get out of the bus and you look up at the top and you see it's fueled and there's ice on it and there's noise coming that you haven't heard before, and there's somebody, the elevator doors are open waiting for you to get in there, and you go, oh my God, I'm going to ride up to the top. You ride up there, and then one by one you start getting in and you strap in there, and then you just kind of wait. And on the shuttle, our crew liked movie quotes, so we would just joke around. We would joke and try to communicate in movie quotes for as much of it as we could. But then at 9 minutes before is the big go, no-go for weather. Well, for lots of reasons, but weather's a big one. And that's where a couple times we got weather's not cooperating today, we're no-go. And so then you have to lie there for another couple hours while they undo that process and safe the vehicle and come back out and get you. And I tell school kids, imagine your parents tell you tomorrow's Christmas. And you wake up and you're all by the stairs in the morning, you're super excited, and they go, oh, no, it's not going to be today. It's going to be on Friday. Friday comes and it's not Friday. Eventually, you just don't ever believe in Christmas anymore, right? Yeah. And so that was the case on our 6th attempt. The clouds were kind of gray. It looked sort of meh. But, we're going through the motions, all of us thinking this isn't going to happen. And then at 9 minutes, we're go for weather. And it went from this joking, jovial environment to completely serious, very crisp communication, fuel cell on, APU check, just one word and a reply. And then kind of whoa, we're really going today. And the clock starts ticking down. I think a couple minutes before you close and lock your visors on your spacesuit, now you just hear this hum of fan and occasional talking in your headset, and your suit is a little puffy, not very puffy, just more than just because you close your visor, it's got a little bit there. And then 10 seconds, 5, 3, 2, 1, and everything kind of starts to rumble. And on the shuttle, it's interesting. You can't see my hands, but the engines are off the center of the axis of the center of gravity by some number of feet. So if you can picture that orange fuel tank and then 2 white solid rocket motors and the shuttle bolted to the side of that. So the engines, the 3 main engines on the shuttle were powered by liquid fuel. Liquid fuel means you can turn a valve and stop the flow of fuel and turn off the engine. The white solid rocket motors are not liquid fuel, they're solid fuel. You could poke it, it looks like a pencil eraser. So there's no turning that off. Because of that, they light the main engines first, make sure they're healthy, about 6 seconds, and that off-axis thrust, and you're sitting at the top of a sailboat mast, the whole thing. I remember I was staring out the window at a piece of metal on the launch structure for 3 hours. And then right when, at T-minus 6 seconds, when the engines started, the whole thing disappeared. The whole launch pad disappeared. And then 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then it swung back. It's timed perfectly, and right when it gets to 0, now you're back pointed up again, and then the explosive bolts separate as the let the thing leap off the launch pad, and then you start flying into space. That powered portion of the launch is about 8.5 to 9 minutes long. You feel 3 G's, so 3 times the force of gravity, in the direction of your chest, kind of pushing you into your seat, pushing your head against the headrest. Difficult to lift your arms up. The checklist book in your hand feels like, whatever. It feels heavy.
Yeah.
For the early part of the launch, you're using the energy to gain altitude. And then the latter part of the launch, the vehicle pitches over, and now you're using the energy to gain speed. And so the computers are targeting a certain altitude and speed to safely cut off to give you, safe orbit. And then you've got some maneuvering to do to catch up to the space station on the shuttle over the next 2.5 days. You'd maneuver to rendezvous to the space station.
Can you feel? So it's been a while since I watched the shuttle launch, but you can feel the boosters peeling off as you're going. Or is it even discernible?
Oh, yeah, it's big time discernible. So that's the one thing that the simulator doesn't do. In the simulator, the data, you're watching data and the numbers, and 2 minutes, the boosters are done, and they separate.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, those things are bolted on with big hunks of metal, right? Because it's a lot of thrust, and it everything needs to be bolted together. To separate those bolts, those charges are significant.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one thing that really got my attention on the real launch was like, okay, booster separation, and 2, 1, the whole shuttle kind of shook as those things separated away. And they were also, all shuttles flew a little bit differently. On Endeavour, my experience, it was a very, very bumpy, violent ride on the solid rocket motors the first 2 minutes. Like if you tried to write something on your kneeboard, you couldn't read your handwriting. And then as soon as they fell off and separated, it became very smooth. You could barely even tell that you were moving, other than the G-forces in there, because the liquid engines were real smooth. And it was so different that I remember looking over at my commander like, is he cool with this?
Is
this normal?
Yeah.
If he's cool, I'm cool, and he was fine. He's cruising along. So I was like, okay, all right, we're good.
That's a funny. I mean, it's like hand grenades going off right outside blow it off.
Yep,
that's interesting. I mean, I've watched the shuttle launch. I grew up kind of being a space nerd of sorts, so I've watched it launch a million times, but never really thought about. They're counting it down too, right? We're watching on TV. They're counting it down because they know the number. You see it launch, but never really. Or you see the boosters peel off, but I've never really thought about like what it's like
inside. Yeah,
inside there.
It's a significant event.
Yeah,
you have a split crowd. It seems like the fans, and then your family.
Yeah,
they're terrified.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so because we had in my particular shuttle launch, all those launch scrubs, those 250 people by the last attempt, we had 12, including my wife and kids and mom and dad and brother, that just
they all jetted too.
No, they were there.
Oh.
They were there. But everybody else, they got to get to work and school and, life.
Totally.
Got to go. Because it took like a month. So anyway, but the others are still watching. They're back at home, and the feelings are the same. The emotions are still the same. And but it is more intense when you're there in person and you're watching it. And because of speed of sound is faster. Speed of light is faster than the speed of sound. You see it leave the launch pad. You see the fire and flames. This is when you're a observer. And maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds later, you hear the rumble and you get hit in the chest with the sound waves. And right about then, it's like, oh my God, my dad, my husband, my son is on that thing.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And so I've been a family support astronaut for many other crews when they launch, and I've been standing on the roof with the family. It's real, it
totally.
hits you, even though you're prepared, and maybe it's a spouse or family that has seen it a previous time. Every single time it gets you like, go, go, go. Like, and the crowd all cheers when it launches, like right at the moment of launch.
Yeah.
There's no cheering on the family side until the engine's cut off and they're safely in orbit.
Yeah.
That's when the cheering happens.
Yeah. The show, you see that, and I was getting teary-eyed because his mom and his brother both just start openly weeping as it's going up because they're just
and it's the third time watching it.
Right, and I'm sure the first two look similar.
First two similar, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a crazy question. You could say that's crazy, and I'm not going to answer it.
Okay, next question.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a space nerd a little bit, but so I remember 1986.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I remember they wheeled the TVs in, right?
Yeah.
We're watching it, and the Challenger explodes. And so, are you so well trained at that point that thought never crosses your mind?
That thought never crossed my mind during the flight, during the thing. I think you're inhuman if you never think about that's a possibility at all. We're all astronauts are human, all families are families, and it becomes a reality. In fact, pre-flight, we sit down with the family support staff at NASA and talk about some of those hard conversations. Okay, where go through the will, go through your checklist, go who do you want with you if it blows up? Who do you want with you that day?
Yeah.
Who do you want to go home with? Do you want to? Well, there's a whole lot to that. I can't go into all the details, but we talk through that, and nobody likes talking about it, but it's better to have a little bit of a game plan than to wing it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So off we go, headed to, at least with respect to the shuttle mission, to the space station.
Yep. So shuttle missions were limited in 2 weeks in duration because how much oxygen we could take on the vehicle. So ours was a space station assembly mission. We had some components of the space station, a Japanese portion of the space station, and we used the robotic arm in the shuttle to pull it out and install it, and then do a series of spacewalks to outfit, and then we also had to change some batteries on the station, and then came home at the end of the 2 weeks. So there's a difference, what we call short duration and long duration. Shuttle missions, 2 weeks, we consider that short duration. When I arrived, our shuttle crew had 7 people, and there were 6 long duration crew members living on the space station. So we had 13 people on the International Space Station, and that was the first time we'd ever had that many. And the shuttle just has 2 bathrooms. It's there's long lines for stuff when there's 13 people there.
Tim's in the bathroom again.
Yeah,
loitering.
We did have a Tim.
Every office has a Tim.
Yeah, and I learned a lot. It was my first mission. You can train for all the technical stuff, but there's a lot of how do you live there? How am I going to find stuff? A lot of that, you just have to go there and do it. So there's a lot of kind of uncertainty feelings of am I going to be good at this? Am I going to be a load that somebody else has to tend to, or am I going to be self-sufficient and do my own thing? And you generally feel pretty confident, but there's just that hint of uncertainty because you've never done it before, and I had that. But within a couple of days, you figure out how to operate and how to do stuff, and you get pretty settled and can contribute in a positive way. So I just had a great time. The one thing, and then my second 2 missions were long duration. I was there for 6 months at a time. The big takeaway from the difference between those 2 missions, I found the best way to describe it is this: if you rent a vacation home and you go there with your family, you don't care what the sprinkler system settings are. You don't care where the wires are routed on the entertainment system. You just want it to work. And if the hot water heater doesn't work, you call the owner and say, hey, we got no hot water. That's what it was like being a short duration crew member on the space station. If I couldn't find something, I'd go find one of the other guys. Hey, where's the hammer? Where's the screwdriver? And then when it came back and I was there for 6 months, then it was like my home. On your home, you know everything about the sprinkler system. You know you know how to light the pilot light. You know where the extra whatevers are, you know? And so that was a cool difference, feeling like, okay, this is my home. I can float by something and just hear the noise and go, that isn't right. It was a cool feeling to be there for the long duration.
That's a crazy idea that this space is my home. Like, that's basically what she was like, oh, wow, this is my home.
It becomes your home, yeah.
That's a thought that never floated through my mind, pun intended. Mm-hmm. You see what I did there?
Hey. Yeah. Slick dad joke.
Yeah, I got all the dad jokes. Okay, I have a million questions. Spacewalk. You catch one when you're on the shuttle mission, right?
I did 3 on the shuttle. They're so fun. They're the thing. There's lots of stuff we do as an astronaut that doesn't necessarily make you feel like an astronaut, but spacewalking is absolutely 100% astronaut stuff.
Yeah, and that's it. That is the pinnacle.
It's
right?
the pinnacle, and there's a lot of training that goes into it. There's a lot of work by the ground team to get you ready, to get the crew ready, to get the equipment ready. So you are the eyes and the ears of many, many people out there doing it. And it's not easy to manipulate the spacesuit. You're in this big puffy thing with basically ski gloves on, trying to manipulate tools and things. And we try to design the tools so that they're accommodating for the gloved hand, but a lot of times you're just really trying to, work it on the fly, and something that's just not quite cooperating the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. And it's not all fun and games when you're going out there. You have some super important things to accomplish while you're out there in a big coordinated attack. But when you step out there, like, what's the initial thought?
Well, the initial thought is, oh my God, this is scary.
This is forever
this is
out there.
Crazy. Yeah, because your brain is still an Earth brain. And so you see Earth 250 miles below you going by at 5 miles a second, and you have this sensation to hold on for dear life and don't let go.
Yeah.
But you need your hands to do stuff. We have safety tethers and little long ones and short ones so you can clip in and be safe and use your hands to do things. But when it's time to move, you got to unclip all that stuff and move hand over hand. And it's kind of scary the first time you do it. And you settle in fairly quickly and realize you're not going to fall, and you're trained for this, and you've got the skills. And sometimes it's easier than the pool. Like in the pool, you're still moving a massive 300-pound thing through the water. So you've got to overcome those water forces. You still have gravity manipulating you. So in space, you don't have that. There's not that water resistance. You don't have the feeling of weight. There's no direction of the gravity pulling blood out of your head, or if you're upside down or whatever. That part's easier. But there's certain things that are harder in space than in the pool. So I love it. It's a challenging. You're out there for 7 hours. It's hard work, but super rewarding, super challenging. We don't do a spacewalk just because they're very deliberate. They've got a set of tasks that you got to get done, and off you go.
Yeah.
You said 5 miles a second. So, can you actually see that rotation?
Oh yeah.
So it's spinning.
Yeah,
5 miles a second.
Have you ever gone outside? Well, sorry, I just did that thing I do. I interrupted.
You can't one up Chris.
I'm not going to, but like, there's an app on your phone, right? You can see when the space station's coming over. Have you ever used this?
No, I've looked at that star app though because we wondered what was up there.
And when you see it, it's like it looks like a star, and it goes overhead like.
Yeah.
When you see the space station go over, that thing is trucking.
Yeah. You're kind of like, oh, we're over the Gulf of Mexico. There's Houston. There's Atlanta. Here comes New York City, Washington D.C., New York City. Oh, there's Boston. Oh, the Atlantic Ocean. It all happens really fast.
That is creepy.
How do you how do you go miles per hour? What's the conversion rate to that? Like, how fast is it really going?
17,500 miles an hour.
He's good at math.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I just know the answer.
I figured. I figured.
Oh man, that's really fast. All right, where are we going? I've lost our direction. That's not a space
covering
joke.
spacewalks. I've been really lucky to have done 10 in my career. So 3 on the shuttle mission, 3 on my second mission in 2013, and then 4 spacewalks on this last mission in 2020.
The part of the show where they're doing I don't remember what the parts were called, but for the AMS and there was that leak, like I was literally on the edge of my seat, like please fix the leak. And I know it was in the past, but in the moment I'm like, oh my God, because so much is on the line for that. Like were there those moments there where the mission was so critical that like you just felt the weight of it?
Yeah, I was really personally invested in those AMS EVAs. I wasn't doing them, as you know, from watching the show, but was with the team for a couple of years as we were preparing and planning and doing all that. So, and Luca and Drew are my really, really good friends. So I would just remember being glued. I was actually in Japan at the time, just being glued to it and listening to them and knowing the inside stuff. You can kind of pick up on words, you can pick up on things and know when things are going smoothly and when I remember Luca paused for a second when he reported that there was red showing on the leak indicator. And I knew right then, like, oh, he that fraction of a pause, I know Luca really well, and that fraction of the pause, I could tell he was thinking, wait, are my eyes deceiving me, or is that really red? The indicator is they built the leak indicator into the fix so that if there was a bypass leak, a little plunger would come out and show some red. So if there was any bit of red showing, it meant that the tubes were not completely sealed. Yeah, and there was no, kind of very little options at that point.
Yeah. What is the AMS like, and how important is it to the space station?
Yeah, the AMS is a large, about the size of a minivan, a scientific experiment, physics experiment that's looking for antimatter in the deep space. And so, I'm not a physicist, but it's this giant magnet, and as particles fly through the magnet, the sensor is sensitive enough to know how those particles bend, and they have different travel patterns through the magnet. And I'm oversimplifying this super complicated device, but basically looking for origins of the universe kind of stuff. So it's a really big deal physics experiment. Many PhDs are coming out of this thing, and it wasn't working, so we had to fix it. Yeah.
Is that what Professor Ting, the Nobel Prize for that? That scene where the conference room, I felt there was a lot of tension.
It was real. That wasn't staged for the show. That was like real tension. And I think there's a thing in there where I walk away and go, whew.
Yeah. Which there's, for once in the show, there's some parallels there. Like everybody's super stressed in the meeting, and one's kind of laying the law down. Everybody else is just kind of, all right.
Okay.
What did they say? It's either you watch the train go by, get in front of it, and get ran over. Like those are your options.
Yeah.
I'm going to take us back to a bit of a storytelling, because I want to hear about riding in, and I'm going to say it wrong, Soyuz?
Mm-hmm.
Soyuz? Am I saying it wrong?
You got it. Soyuz, yeah.
Capsule. What's that? I mean, it feels like you're in a toaster oven, like just
Yeah, it's
super tiny.
really, really small. It's 3 people, and those seats are squished together. Your shoulders are touching. I was in the right seat, so my right shoulder was touching the wall. Like there was a window right there. My shoulder pretty much touching the window. Left shoulder touching Anatoly's shoulder, and his shoulder touching Ivan's shoulder, and not any room for cargo. You know, some small bags you can stuff in different places, but you're really wedged in there. When you climb in the vehicle on the launch pad, only one person can go at a time. The left and the right seat have to go in, and the center seat guy goes in, and there's no room for... The shuttle had plenty of room to have people help you strap in. There's none of that on the Soyuz. It's really, really tiny. If you looked at it, you'd think, wow, that's pretty rudimentary. But they've upgraded the computer systems, and it's really robust. It in some sense it's basic, but it's got redundancy built into it in kind of some clever non-computer relying ways. You know, very analog. It's got a computer system and a backup analog system, so you're pretty much gonna be fine in the Soyuz.
Like launch experience, same,
launch
different?
experience. So the big difference on the launch experience, the physics is the same. So you got to escape the same forces, and your body still goes through the same kind of 3.5 Gs launch profile as shuttle. The big difference, though, is the mass of the vehicle and how you feel. So if you're driving in a heavily loaded dump truck down a road, and you go, jiggle the steering wheel, the dump truck just kind of goes and lazily responds to you. But if you did that with a zippy little Porsche or sports car, it's going to swerve all over and respond instantly to those inputs on the steering wheel. Well, the shuttle is this massive pickup truck-like thing. And so I remember when we launched it, you feel it roll up. It rolls upside down shortly after liftoff, and kind of this lumbering feeling. And I remember in the Soyuz when we launched, and then the computer system takes over. It snaps to a heading and rolls quickly, and it was very snappy, because it's so much smaller and so much lighter, and it responds instantly to the commit to the inputs. They're both just designed differently. The Soyuz is just to get people to and from the space station safely. The shuttle, people, and a bunch of stuff. So different missions, and the feel is slightly different, but the overall time and forces on your body are the same.
Gotcha.
The return in the Soyuz is terrifying to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the launch,
Mm-hmm.
but the return, man, what G's is that pulling, and what are you seeing, and what are you experiencing?
Yeah, the basic thing with return. So on launch, all the bad, scary stuff that can kill you is where? Behind you.
Mm-hmm.
On reentry, all the bad, scary stuff that can kill you is directly in front of you.
Yeah.
So you have to go through it. And so the heat shield has to work, and you feel and that they have to calculate the reentry angle just perfectly. Imagine skipping a stone on a lake. If you throw it too steep, it just penetrates the water and slams into the ground at high impact. If you throw it too say you wanted 3 skips only. If you threw it too shallow, which is what you try to do when you're skipping a stone, it skips, and eventually 20 skips later it sinks. Well, the space version of that, if you're too shallow, you just skip off the atmosphere and you never penetrate it, and you've got the rest of your life in space to think about your calculation error.
It's not funny.
Steve, you didn't run.
Yeah.
You didn't
Tim.
carry the one.
Yeah.
Tim did it.
Oh, it's Tim again?
Yeah.
And then if you're too steep, you grab the atmosphere right away, and your G-forces are high, and bad for your body, could be catastrophic for the vehicle. So you need this perfect reentry angle so that everything lines up and you hit, where your target, where you're trying to land, and all that stuff. Really crazy. I think reentry day is the day that's most stressful for us as a crew.
Really?
More so than launch, yeah.
Oh, I would have never guessed that.
You're happy because you're going home, but still, it's you realize there's a lot of stuff that the vehicle has to do and you have to do to get back safely.
Totally.
Yeah.
So there's there's some pretty cool things along the way, like officiating a wedding that you got to do. You were able to see the space station, or no, I'm sorry, the launch pad, and take pictures of it as people were coming to you.
The SpaceX, yeah.
So I bet you would love that story.
Yeah, you got to watch. The Disney guys did a fantastic job putting this show together. It's really well done. 6 episodes on Disney Plus. But yeah, that day, that launch day, where my 2 friends Bob and Doug were test pilots for the SpaceX Dragon, and they're rendezvousing with us. So the space station has to go directly over the launch pad moments before liftoff, and
so they could catch up.
So they can catch up, and I got some good pictures of the launch pad right then, and I was just really fired up. I recorded. It didn't make it in the show, but I recorded. I had cameras everywhere of myself and the cosmonauts that were in there right at that launch, and there was some good footage. We're high-fiving and going, go, yeah, all right. Good stuff.
So you were in the space station when SpaceX Dragon capsule connected to it?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's amazing. I watched that. I watched it real life.
Yep.
I was watching it on my computer, streaming on the NASA website.
So is he.
Yeah, so
I know.
You're just one of those fair weather fans that just cared about the launch and didn't care about the actual mission, which was get to the space station and test out the vehicle.
No. I watched the Connect and everything.
Okay.
I don't know how long. I mean, I remember watching the launch. I remember watching the Connect and all of it.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, so I was there as myself and the 2 cosmonauts were receiving them, and then Bob and Doug joined us for the middle 2 months, and then it was just back to 3 of us for the last 2 months of my mission.
So we're like, is the SpaceX interface to this? So what's the right word? Is the SpaceX interface to this the space program like exciting? Worrisome, troublesome, interesting?
Oh, exciting!
Yeah. That's how I perceived it from my very stupid, very civilian perspective.
And yeah, it's very exciting. We don't see it.
It is true, man.
We don't see it as a competition. The success of the commercial companies, SpaceX and every other one of them, will really allow the government, NASA, and the other government partners to go beyond low Earth orbit, go back to the moon, ultimately onto Mars. SpaceX is building a rocket that can get to Mars, but I think, this is just my opinion, that it's so expensive to do missions to Mars that it's probably more than can be a business case for one company. Maybe. I mean, it's bad to bet against Elon, so
totally.
He probably will figure out a way to do it. But the way I kind of study it, it seems like it's better suited for a group of countries, international cooperation to do Mars missions, at least the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows where, 100-some years ago, the Wright brothers flew, so look where we are now. Who knows what 100 years from now will bring, I don't know.
It's totally true.
Yeah, the don't bet against Elon's pretty good advice.
Yeah.
For listeners, he's done a few things.
Yeah, the man knows how to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So that mission, the most recent mission was March of 2020 to late October of 2020. I joke around with people and say that 4 years ago I knew I was going into quarantine in March of 2020. I just didn't know all of you guys would join me there. But then the mission was winding down, and it's interesting when you're in space and you're winding down those 6 months on board. It's always a natural conversation amongst the crew, like, what are you going to do when you get back? Or are you going to do another mission? And most people stick around for more missions. I mean, I my previous 2 missions, I didn't even think about leaving, And so the conversation is more towards, like, what within NASA are you going to do in between now and your next mission? Because I was there for 17 years, flew space twice. You do quick math, it's like 5 to 6 years between missions.
Yep.
So you got to do something. And this time I kind of knew that I had 3 great missions. I had to retire from the Navy anyways. You have to retire at 30 years from the military. So that was coming up. And so I had this question of, do I stick around at NASA, convert from a military guy to a civilian astronaut and stick around for another mission, which was enticing. I love working there. I love flying in space. Or try to do something different. And if the answer is that, then what? And I didn't know the what. I kind of had a sense, okay, I was 50 at the time. If I'm going to try to do something else, non-aerospace, it's probably easier to get that job as a 50-year-old than it is as a 58-year-old or something. So I kind of had made up my mind that I was going to leave NASA, but it was the what part that took some time to figure out. And after I got back from space, did the rehab. By the way, it takes about a month to totally feel normal.
Wow.
If the more you do, the more flights you have, the quicker. I believe, I don't have data, but I personally felt like my body remembered quickly. So within a couple days, I was able to walk fine, and even on coming off the airplane you saw in the show, that was 24 hours after landing. I was able to walk around. I didn't have a lot of stamina.
Right.
And your balance system's a little goofy. If you saw me in the grocery store at the 2-week mark, you couldn't tell, but I could tell that there's some stuff that's not quite right.
Yeah.
But we spend a lot of time in the gym, orange cones on the basketball court, back and forth, and stand on one leg and throw a tennis ball. Things to get your balance system all dialed back in. So, anyways, we did the recovery, thinking about the future, and right at that time, my really good friend who's on the board of the Medal of Honor Museum, he called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested, or would you consider coming to work for the Medal of Honor Museum?" And I had not, I was thinking about other things, so it was kind of like out of left field.
Totally.
I was kind of, well, I guess, yeah, tell me more about it. And as he told me more about the project, and it's, we're going to build this museum in Dallas. It's going to have a leadership institute, and it's a small team, and his name's Mike. I'm like, Mike, I have never built anything, never even built my own. I built a deck, but not a humongous museum, and I've never raised money before at that scale. And so I had a lot of self-doubt, is that the right fit for me? Is it fair to the organization to hire me for that when there's other people that have built stuff and have been, others that have been professional fundraisers and whatever? No, he said, just consider it and learn more. And I was okay, sure. The more I learned, the more interested I got, and the more, built up a little confidence. Like, well, I don't know how to build stuff, but it doesn't. I'm not the one. They'll have a team of people that will be experts that can do that stuff, and I just got really excited about it. And so last August, I moved from Houston up to Dallas, and in this housing market, I'm not embarrassed to say, I'm proud to say that, man, we got our butts kicked, and we just finally got a house under contract. It was just painful road.
Wow. It's a fist fight out there, isn't it?
It is just crazy, and so everybody's listening's probably got their own story, but, we put in so many offers and just kept getting outbid, and, you give up all your rights as a buyer, and it's just stuff that 5 years ago you told somebody that this is the process. You go, what? That's insane. We're not doing that. Mm-hmm. But sure enough, that's what it takes. And so, anyways, we're here now, and I've been in the job for, like I said, 9 months, and March 25th is National Medal of Honor Day, and that was our groundbreaking ceremony. But also the real day of construction. The next day, the tents came down from the ceremony, and bulldozers were moving stuff, and construction began. And so we're about 2 months into construction there in Arlington. The site is right there in the entertainment district, amongst the AT&T football stadium, and the old and new Texas Rangers ball fields, Globe Life Field, and now Choctaw Stadium, Texas Live. It's just a really, really good location for something like this, close to DFW, centrally located in the country, Six Flags. You just got a lot of positive things, so we're excited. And the city of Arlington's excited. DFW, I think it's fantastic for the area. So take about 2.5 years to build it and open the doors. We're hoping Veterans Day of 2024.
What's the mission of the museum? What's the and there's a leadership component to it, but what's the underlying or the underpinnings of it?
So there's been 3,511 Medal of Honors awarded since Abraham Lincoln put the thing into effect in 1861. There's no way in one museum can you tell 3,500 stories, right? Like you might be able to read every plaque, but most people would
pass them by.
Pass out at the number 10. The museum is going to be about 35,000 square feet. So in that area, we can showcase, we think, about 50 of the stories in a permanent way, and we'll have rotational galleries as well as digital content where you can pull up information about any of them. Tell me all the people from South Carolina, that kind of thing, or whatever you want to know, you can find out. But it's really not going to be a museum of military history. It's a museum about people's stories.
Oh yeah,
and how those stories can inspire people to be a better version of themselves, like the I can always do one more push-up kind of concept. And one of the recipients, a friend of mine, Will Swenson, he recently said, I love this quote. He goes, all the recipients are extraordinary in their ordinaryism.
Mm-hmm.
They're just people that were in a place and time and found something in themselves to do an extraordinary action.
Yeah.
And then there's amazing stories before they entered the military. Some have amazing stories after the life after the military. Some cases, the war didn't catch up to them for 40 years. And, for whatever reason, the recognition didn't come until later. So the way we're going to arrange the museum is by themes. It's not going to be, these are all the Civil War people, these are all the World War I people. It's Coming to the Rescue is a gallery.
Yes.
The Ultimate Sacrifice is a gallery. Air and Naval is a gallery. Ground Combat is a gallery. The Battle After the Battle, some people struggle coming home and that sort of thing. And this allows us to, because courage in 1861 on the Gettysburg battlefield is the same as Afghanistan courage, right? I mean, those years don't make it different. So we can have different time frames, different era military members right next to each other in each of those themed galleries. So we're really excited about how that will lay out and the inspirational nature. And today's day and age, you can't have a museum where it's just reading stuff. You got to have interactive things, and you got to have sound and all of that. So we're working through those processes right now. But you mentioned the leader. I'm doing a lot of talking. You want me to just keep rolling?
You keep going. Like I'm just, I'm recording questions in my mind and listening intently.
So the part that I think that the recipients themselves are most excited about is the Leadership Institute. We'll have a K through 12 component that will come probably in a year or two. The first programs for adults, corporate training, leadership training, team building, that sort of thing. This November, we've got our first course, a 3.5-day course taught here in Arlington, because recently we realized, hey, wait a minute. We don't need the building to be built before we put content out for people to enjoy. So we've hired some people, and I have a full-time guy now who's running the Leadership Institute, and really putting the curriculum together. So that's all happening now. So really just excited about all that.
Okay, so let me ask what's the call to action around this? Because there's an ongoing construction effort that's being built. There's lots of wheels in motion, but we have probably half of our listeners right here, right? What can we do as a community of largely construction folks, but I just mean community of people who live in this area or even in the extended area? What can we do to help the mission of the museum?
Well, awareness is one thing. Like just by listening and learning that it's out there and letting your neighbors know. And it's a national museum. So it happens to be right here in the DFW Metroplex, but it's for the whole country to enjoy. So telling friends and acquaintances around the country, that's great. And on the every little bit helps. You can donate on our website. Give us the $5.95 you were going to spend at Starbucks tomorrow. We'll take it and go to Starbucks on Sunday. So we just appreciate any. The website is mohmuseum.org, and you can see when you go right to the website, it shows this animated view of what the building will look like. It's a really, really cool design with this. The museum deck itself is suspended up in the air by 5 giant pillars. Each of those represent a military service. So it's a cool design, really cool design.
And if you're on LinkedIn, your marketing team's done an outstanding job with your LinkedIn page. Almost every single day, or maybe it is every single day, there's a story of a recipient and how they got it and why they got it.
Yeah.
And it's a great read when it comes through your newsfeed.
Yeah, they're usually pretty short, and you can read it quickly. And so those are some of the things that we'll have in the museum itself to inspire folks.
For sure.
All right, so I'm going to pin that because there's a couple questions we ask at the end that I got to get to you too. One of them is a book. Like our listeners love books, and so if there's a book you would say, hey man, this is an excellent read, I would commend it to yours. And then like we end with kind of what's our one big thing, like a big takeaway, a mantra, whatever it might happen to be. So let me give you that 2-step out, a book and one big thing.
Yeah.
Chris Cassidy.
I'll do 2 books. The book, I was never a big reader growing up, and I always hated it because it was always required reading.
Yeah.
And the first book that I read on my own and couldn't put it down was this one called The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it, and I remember just not wanting to ever put it down. So that was my favorite book growing up. Amazing story of just survival and ultimate revenge. And yeah, it was great. And then right now, actually, I'm listening to a book called by Kyle Carpenter, who's a Medal of Honor recipient who's coming into town next week. So I wanted to listen to his book called You Are Worth It. It's about his life and his journey before and after the medal. He some unbelievable injuries in his action. So anyways, those are 2 books that I have and am enjoying.
Count of Monte Cristo is a cool callback for me because I can remember loving it in required reading back when I was a kid too. Just like, oh my gosh, this is really good.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
I tried to commend it to Williams Reading, and I like went on. There's some website that like rates whether or not a kid should read a book, and it's like, you should probably be 16 before you read this book. And so I was like, I'll hold this one for just a few more years.
I'll let him have it. It's a good one.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
What was your second question? I got.
What's the one big thing? Like a big takeaway for our listeners as we wrap up our episode. Sometimes the way I phrase it is like if they hear nothing else except the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want listeners to take away from your life, your experiences, your journey? What is it?
If not now, when, and if not me, then who? I just love that line, and it has been with me in SEAL training, in Afghanistan, and on spacewalks. I remember thinking, there was one particular spacewalk was trying to connect this cable that just wouldn't connect. It was every bit of strength I had to get the interfaces together, and then at the same time had to throw a lever. And I remember thinking, if not me, then who's going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen by itself. So get it done. So if not me, then who?
Chris, it's been an absolute honor to hang out with you. I appreciate you telling us stories, indulging my stupidity sometimes, and just sharing all of it. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it.